All right, so I got the moon in the third house. So this means that, you seek emotional connections through conversations, through, relationships you have with people, and those are like very meaningful to you. So, like, you might be a family member, you care about like your brother, your sister, more so that than like mom and dad. That's more in like other houses, right? But this one, you know, you have a close connection to somebody like that, and if it ain't that, it's like your friends, like close friends, without them, life wouldn't be worth living. You don't talk to very many other people, but this person, you kind of need around. It's like emotional support, you know, you connect emotional support with um, communicating and like even having fun, with certain people, people who are close to you, you do this with, but not with everybody. You might not be one to like just make new friends and shit like that. Some people can, but it's still not the same. Um, yeah, it's still not the same. They'll always remember the friends they used to have. Um, Somebody who has this placement. But I'm going through each of the signs. So Aries, moon in the third house. So Aries moon, we know that to be, somebody who gets out of sorts, can get very aggressive, loud when they get upset. At the same time, they can be, fun to be around. When it's like, people they care about, like their family, you know, their close friends. They see that bright side of themselves and they're like, damn, you're kind of inspiring me to get off and like get some shit started for myself. You're, lighting a fire under my ass to get me doing something. Or, maybe you did piss your friend off and they're like, about to fight you for it, about it. They're about to smack you in the fucking face, um, because this person, don't tolerate that shit. If you're doing something that because you would know if you're like, in this person's life, in any kind of like real, like they spend a lot of time around you, what ticks them off and everything else. They will go the fuck off on and they will, because this is in the third house too. So they're gonna communicate that shit, pretty loud and pretty clear, pretty fucking really direct. I don't like this kind of behavior, and if you do it, these are the repercussions. And then like they might not even like give you a warning; they might just smack you, and then be like, "Well, I told you not to fucking say that, or not to fucking do that, not around me." You know, and that's how these people operate. More in their emotional state though, because this is the moon sign, right? So like typically your friend or this person who has this placement might not always be like that, but with you and people they're close with, when they get upset, you know they're gonna be like that. They're gonna get all aggressive, and like other people wouldn't know that. Like regular people who don't know this person will not know that they have an aggressive side and they get loud and shit like that. um and things don't go their way, or even that this person is passionate towards a certain goal they have in life, because that's the positive side of the moon sign. The moon sign's always looked at, because it connects to your emotions and shit, but it's also, there's good things with that too. Like this person might be passionate towards their goals, and you see that. Only like people who see them in their daily lives, like constantly see that side of them, not people who walk around like bystanders and like acquaintances. They don't see shit like that. But the next person is Taurus moon in the third house. So Taurus moon in the third house, this person likes to get away from things when things don't ain't right. But like when they get away, they don't like get away. They still know what's going on, because this is Taurus, so they know what's going on. All my finances are like this, or maybe people don't want me around because whatever, or I feel like I need to get away from people because I need to recharge. They said some things that pissed me off, so I have to get away from them. This happens when somebody's getting emotionally charged. They get away, they isolate themselves, they stay away from people for a little bit. Figure out why they're upset, and and they sit with it, and they're like, oh, eventually they go back and they're like, oh, I was just upset because they said this or that. And sometimes they take it out on themselves, and they're, oh, I wasn't this enough for these people, I wasn't this enough for these people, um in my life, family members, that could be close family members, that could be friends, you know I wasn't doing enough in the relationships, so now I feel like less of a person, or whatever. If that's you, you're not less of a person or anything. You probably were just around too much, and they didn't see what you were doing. At the same time, it could be that, and it could be that you were, not doing enough, to like, love and care for the people around you. And then it is on you, and it is your fault, you know. And you will know this if you like isolate yourself and look at things, because like you have the ability to do that when you get upset. Like at first you're like, oh my God, they pissed me off, they said certain things, and I don't like to take my anger out like that, and sometimes with some people you do take your anger out, but like what it is instead of like the Aries, right, you allow it to just be like, okay, they said that, but they're just being foolish, they don't actually mean it. And then like they keep doing it though, and then after a while you consistently hear them say shit that you don't like, or do shit you don't like, then you fucking go off on them. And when you go the fuck off on them, they're like, what the, I didn't know, yes, you fucking did, and like the fact that you forgot, that hurt me more than anything, you know but then you like to realize after a while that you had a role to play in it too, and you try to, like, I don't know, try to be more mature about it, because this is Taurus is the exalted moon, so you know how to regulate your emotions better than many other people, including like me. you know you got that type of ability, in you. So when you're doing that, don't stay closed off, because you know that you care about those people, and like you don't, and this is, you don't always like show, certain sides of yourself to other people. You don't go above and beyond for other people. You do that for the people you love, people you cherish. You know, regular people you're not gonna fucking lift a finger for, but these people you will. And that hurts too. But at the end of the day, you gotta be like, look at things, be like, do you have to get away from these people? Because sometimes you do have to. When life, you have to get away from those people. So they learn the lesson that, you were there for a purpose, and they kind of like did you wrong by not seeing how important you were there. Like they didn't see your worth. But on the same other side, maybe you were the one who was just like, you know, out of sorts because I don't know, and you're the one who's like in the wrong, so you have to come back into it, and be like, oh well, I'm sorry, I lashed out and shit, but like you just gotta like communicate better, with people. Let them know, like set those ground rules, be like, if you do this right, I'm gonna be fucking pissed, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that, or I'm not gonna do this, or I'm not gonna do that for you, somebody I care about, somebody I love, and you got to do that in your relationships, like the ones that are meaningful to you. So the next person operates in their emotional state. This is Gemini moon in the third house. So this person likes to run around and talk about, you know when they're more in their feelings, emotional state. mind. You know, somebody could have sent them into whatever, and they want to just run around and talk shit about people, but they do it in a like smarty smart way. Oh, these people don't appreciate my intelligence, whatever. But at the same time, these people only talk to people that they love and care for. So what I'm saying about this, these are like family members and friends that they can like conversate with. You know, you like those people. You like being around those people when you're like emotionally hurt. Can I talk to you? I had a bad day doing at work because these people were like this, and I told them, because you're kind of like more logical about things or whatever, and you're telling people that you care about all this stuff, and sometimes when you do that, they don't want you around because you're always coming to them when something goes wrong, and you're like always coming to them bitching about you know what might have happened or whatever, because like this happens when you are, because this is the third house, right? So this is about your close connections, your closer connections, because it's the moon in the third house, and this is Gemini. So now you're going to the people you care about, and you're talking to them all the time, so you got to make sure that you are like with people, or there's somebody in your life, right, that is cool. And it's like literally you can come to me at any time and you can talk to me about anything. Because sometimes life is like not like that, and nobody wants to hear your shit. Nobody wants to hear what you've been through or any of that shit. Because they themselves are maybe they're trying to tell you something, and the way you talk, and it's the way you talk and shit. The way you talk, it makes it seem as though nobody else really matters, and like you were right, you were right about everything. So like those people that did you wrong were wrong, and like you're telling them in a way that's like I know everything. Those fucking people didn't know shit. I wasn't the wrong one in the wrong. And you're always talking about people and things, and sometimes it's all right, but then at some point it gets to being a like problem sometimes. People don't want to hear that. So then you have to, I don't know, learn how to listen more. This person, you gotta learn how to listen to other people more, and don't think of it as, oh, I'm now dumber than them because I have to like stoop down and listen to what they have to say, and like what they have to say is, whatever. You're not dumb. You actually are probably more, intelligent person than they are. But being smart doesn't always mean you're right, you know? And that's it, you know? But there's good things with that. Like you're one that can, after, you've had a long day and stuff, you can, decompress with and vent to like, people, and eventually when you do become that person who can listen to other people, and you can have like great conversations with, your loved ones and friends, and, let them know that you are also a person that can, listen to what they have to say, and give, and not just listen to what they have to say, but give like, good feedback onto how they can, manage their life better, or like, go about making their life, better. Because you actually do, you know, love and care for the people that are in your life, your friends, your family, or whoever that is. And you would be the one to like give them information that could get them, on their way better. Um, through life. But anyways, the next person is Cancer Moon in the third house. Cancer Moon in the third house. This person is emotionally intelligent as well. They can pick up on if somebody's upset or not. Especially when it's like a friend or family member they've been around. It's not just some like random ass person on the fucking streets. It's somebody that they've seen day in day out. Mother, brother, son. Um, you know, best friend, that type of thing. You're like, okay, I can tell that you're, out of sorts today, and you try to be that person who's like, what's wrong, um, what happened, but at the same time, you can be one who's like, you need people there for you, all the time. Like when shit's not going good for you, you need people there for you, and sometimes it can't be, and that makes you feel like you're, I don't know, worthless, don't do enough, aren't seeing things right. But really, it's not that. It's just, people, might need to be away from you because you, as a Cancer, initiate emotional, you know, feelings in other people. People start to be deeper and feel deeper around you, just being in your presence, and you talking to them. They now, open up into their like emotional state. They become more like that. You can start picking up on if they're, not having a good day or having a great day. And maybe, you're not having a good day. And then you're going to try to put them down and, other things, depending on the person, a more wiser Cancer, older one might not, and just be like, well, that's good for you. You are having a great time. And like with that, you can turn their positivity into your positivity, you know. At the same time, if you're a little more immature, you might try to bring them down, because you know, feel some type of way, and you wanted them, the person that, um, cares about you, like a family member, whatever, to feel what you were going through. So they get it, but they already get it because you have a way of talking, and the way you talk, it hits different. So they already hear that in your voice, in your very being. You know, sometimes like when you become that person that is, there for other people, you're not, there's nothing, sometimes you feel that there's nobody there for you. And you want to cry and you want to bitch about things, and then when that happens, it's kind of like it's all like on one person, and that's kind of like too much sometimes. But sometimes it works out, and they're like, oh well, maybe you need to take time for yourself and do things for yourself more, and not worry about, oh, well, my other, these people are, hurt, my brother, my sister, or my friends, you gotta take time to yourself and look back and be like, well, how do I feel, and you gotta get and make sure you're all right, because like in your relationships, you kind of, in a way dictate, you know the way things move smoothly or not. If always negative, then the relationships you go in are always going to be negative. But if you are positive, you know things start to change and people start to be positive. And maybe if everybody ain't positive, the more positive energy is going to make things move smoother in your relationships. You know, and Cancer is one of, like, certain wisdom they know of. Like those curveballs. Shit's not always smooth sailing. That type of thing. Don't just let it, keep you like stagnant or anything. You can still be a supportive, loving, caring person, to your family members and friends. Just know that, and don't forget that they too have their time, and they might need to be away from you, is what I'm saying. And don't take offense to that. That just might be how they need to be, when things ain't going their way. They don't need to always be locked down to you, because that's just life. But next on the list is Leo. Leo, moon in the third house. This person, we know that this person would get out of sorts, right? If something, were to happen, you ticked them off a certain way. You know, you don't, or and this is a person though, right? That ain't always loud sometimes, you know. But when they like something, or they find passion in something, right? That they really like, and you know they get loud and proud about it. You know, at the same time they can get loud and proud about the shit they don't care for, don't like. Now, a regular person, walking around day to day ain't gonna know this about this person, because they don't let that be seen. They don't let their moon sign be seen by everybody. Just the people in their relationship that are close to them, close friends, family members. These people see that side of them more, and they're like loud, and they might even get out of sorts and start fighting. They'll cause a scene. If you didn't listen to what they had to say, they'll make you look like a bad guy. They'll make you look, like a fool, or they'll try to, you know, when they get upset. They'll say shit like, look at this guy, look at this girl for, she's done this, this, and this, and she's always on my, or he's always, fucking with me, this way and that way. I tell him to not do it, and he does it anyways. That shit's so disrespectful. Why would you ever, do things like that? You know, Sometimes it's not always, the other person. With this person, who has the Leo moon in the third house. Sometimes you don't, um, damn, you know, see where the other person's coming from. But I hear you sometimes though, Leo moon and shit though, because they know what ticks you off as well. Sometimes they do shit to tick you off, to like see if you are still you. That's what I'm trying to say. Are you still my friend that does this, does that? Because you've been acting like strange lately. You've been acting different, and they'll say those things knowing that it's going to piss you off, knowing that it's going to, make you mad. But they were just doing that to see if you're still the same person you've always been. And when they see that side of yourself, they're like, okay, I know I messed up, but I was just trying to see if that's still my, friend who I knew for all this time. Because in life, things change and other things, but some things never change. That's what they're looking for. you know. So at random times, your friends might do shit to, piss you off. But it's like to see, you're still, the same guy or girl they, know. Life has, hit you in a way that makes you not so passionate, not so loud and proud about the things you like, you know, things you like to do with them specifically, because it's like the people you care about. And this person, Leo Moon, you like to have people around. You don't like to push people away, because without them, you don't shine as much. You don't feel life as much when people ain't around. On like a deeper level, you know, you need that. So the next person is Virgo, moon in the third house. Now, this person, when they get emotional, they over analyze shit. But like not in a way that's like a good way. Like not in a way that's like, I'm trying to help you improve. They're just being a fucking asshole. And I know people who are like this, you know. But it's in the third house, so like they're even more so like this. They'll be digging your ass about the littlest fucking thing. I told you to set the cup on the counter, but put it on the left side, not the right side. And maybe, they never stated that. They just said do that. And like before, like a couple days ago, they said, "Oh, can you please always put the cup on the left side?" and you put the cup on the right side. So now they're like recalling shit and playing games with you and saying, oh, well, you didn't do that. That's disrespectful. How dare you? Like, what the hell are you doing? And they're getting on your ass and you're like, what the fuck? That's like something small. And you're getting my ass about this shit, playing games with me like that. What the fuck's wrong with you? And this person just, and they do, these people do, every once in a while, and it's only with the people that they always constantly see in their life. They always seeing it though. That's why they get upset, They always see those like, things that, their loved ones and close, friends don't see, and they're telling them, the little things matter, you know. And then sometimes it gets to a point where then they're like, they're just a nitpicker about all kind of shit. And then it's like, this person might distance themselves or, cause other people to not want to be around them anymore. One of the two. And they'll either be like, I can't associate with you anymore because you're too fucking dumb and you can't do the small things right, or this person will be nitpicking their friend or family member, and they'll just be like, I'm done. I can't do this no more. You're always bitching about the littlest fucking things. We're just out here trying to live life. That's how they are with but they don't do that with regular people. They can like let that small shit pass because it just passes through. Like an acquaintance or something else, they might have all kind of imperfections and things that they don't like because they can see it and pick up on it real quick, but they don't care because that person's out of there. They ain't seeing them day in and day out. And this person moves in a like, improvement mindset, and they do have that typically when they're like more positive, and then when they're negative, they also can like worry a lot about things. And like, so like they think things through a lot, right? So they could be like, don't do this because, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So don't do it. And they'll lay it out like, no, if you do this, da 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 da, that'll happen, da 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 da. And they could be like more of a warrior as well, you know. But they also do that to like, cause like they don't want to like see the people they care about, lose or fail or, sell themselves short, and that's when they're being like, good or more positive. They might worry about other people, because they take note of it and they're like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, and you should do it, and because they have that kind of like way about them, like they kind of assholes about it, but it's still like, I want you to know because I want you to improve type thing. And they don't do that shit with everybody else. They just do it with their friends and family members. Now the next person is Libra, moon in the third house. This person is Gosper. So what does this mean? This person likes to like learn about people and their relationships with like work, family, other things, you know. Um, when it comes to, this stuff, right? They like to know about their friends and family, know about all the people that they know about. Oh, you're associated with this person now? I don't know. They might start getting, like, this person might start judging you more, as a friend when they get emotional. You know, I heard that you associate with these people or this group, and that I don't fuck with that. So now they're gonna get, stupid and play games like that. You know, they're gonna be like more like almost judgmental of you. Not almost, they will be judging you, being like, I wouldn't do that because that's not what a good person does. A good person doesn't stay with those kind of people. A good person doesn't move with that kind of crowd, and they do shit like that when they get all bent out of shape. They might even spread rumors about you if they're like really fucking toxic. And that's like the worst of the worst. They start, spreading rumors. I heard this person, and that's when they're like jealous, and they don't want to do that, you know, to anybody, you know, like they actually care about, But if they like do that shit to like somebody they don't care about, and like somebody, finds them, they'll be like, what the fuck? And it's not because, it's like, why are you gonna mess that person's life up when you could just like leave them the fuck alone? Why you, and then, it makes, because like they see this person, right, this person with the Libra moon, as a person who has like a sense of justice about them and other things, you know at certain times, and they like to, make things, keep the peace, within their, like, relationships. But then they're gonna go out of their way to like fuck with somebody else when they didn't need to do that. They didn't need to fucking, hop on somebody's, and peck them like that. you know like, why the fuck did you do that? Friends might come up to them and be, like that with them. You don't have to go out of your way towards every fucking person and like see what the fuck's going on and peck into their business. You know, this person could be fucking nosy a bit, just trying to cause, drama, and then like try to come in there and like be the like hero as well. And that's the negative side of it. But the positive side is like, when like somebody that they care about is, in need of some like, help, they're there. They'll, talk them out of it or talk them through whatever they need, whatever they're going through. I'll get you what you need. You need me to like, do this for you, I'll do it. I'll go talk to those people on your behalf for you. And that's what they do for the people they like really care about. Not just anybody, because this is the moon sign. This side of them don't come out all the time. But when they're like deeply hurt, or when they like deeply moved by, somebody else, they'll do shit like that. Um, so the next person is Scorpio moon in the third house. This person likes to run around and not all the time, just when they get emotional. They like to run around and, for lack of, words, they like to fuck shit up. They'll like, flip chairs and, slap people in the face and, get aggressive. And it's towards like people who they care about and shit, right? So this person, right, they do care deeply about their loved ones and other things. But when they feel like they're being attacked, they feel like they're being neglected, they're, like you're minimizing what they do. Typically, it's like that. If you try to minimize what they do, because like this person may be, you know, about themselves and other things so much, but they also do things for other people, the people they care about. They do, you know. It might not be, you know, what you think is, as a person who's, in a relationship with this person, as like important, or as that being helpful. But they do like small things for you, or something. And like it's like, or it might be as simple as, I'm sticking around. I could be, not here, and I'm still, sticking with you through all your fucked up, times, and everything else. So you need to like heed calls to like, not saying shit like that. I don't necessarily need all the praise or anything, because this is an introvert, when they get, emotional, I don't need all that loud shit or anything. But I do need you to not say dumb shit like, I'm not doing anything, I'm not holding my weight, I'm not, of any like worth. I can't accomplish my goals, or anything like that. They hear shit like that, they get out of sorts. You know, and it's because like they need that deep emotional connection, even if it's somebody who has a Scorpio moon. They actually need that more so than the sun actually. But this person, because in like deep connections with their family members and friends, you know, you're gonna like minimize my importance in the relationship because of this or that. But I've always been here. I've always had your back, and I've always done this. I might not be the smartest person, or this person, but I've always been there. Through it all, the good and bad. Where somebody else would have like left your ass, I was still there. That type of thing. And they get upset at their loved ones when they don't see that. Like what? Like why would you say that or think that or have doubt that I would like not be there for you or something? At the same time, this person likes to manipulate and shit, right? So they like to, use that as a means to like get what they want. And in the relationship, they're the ones always, winning because they're always bringing up the past and like how they've been there for somebody else. And, they're basically, the other person is not getting anything from it. Like they're not gaining what they want. They're not getting what they need in the relationship. They're not growing as a person. You're growing. You're gaining things as this person who got Scorpio moon, but they're not gaining anything. They don't have the, you just use the people, in your life, and that's not a good thing. That's the negative side.
The one over there by the theater on the other side.
And that's the sad thing about that. You know, it could be, either that or that, either the people in your life are not, seeing you as, valuable, then you're gonna get upset and, lash out at them. Or you're, using these people and then you're gonna lash out because you're using the people in your life. And what I mean by using is actually abusing because they're not gaining anything from you. They're not gaining like anything, like money, notoriety, any type of growth as a person, you know. That's kind of a toxic relationship where you're pulling them along and they ain't getting anything from it. Scorpio can manipulate as well. But like, and that's the thing, nobody would ever know that side of you because, you know, it's only the people that you're around most of the time. And you know this actually, you know, other people would never know that about you. That you have a manipulative side and other things. But you could also be the one that's manipulated by others. And then in time, you're like, well, what have I gained? Is this even a relationship that I need to be in? It might be. You just probably need to communicate more. Scorpio is an introvert. Yeah. About like what you're feeling about what they're doing, and you know, you don't just jump to fighting and shit right away when things don't go your way, or running out on, and trying to do some other stuff, you know, or coming back and trying to like manipulate the situation to where you need to be somebody who can be like, okay, we can both, you know, grow as people. We can both, get past this, because you have that about you, because you don't want to lose these people, these people that you actually fucking care about, your family members, your friends. These are not like pawns or anything like that to you. Like, really, you gotta look at things and be like, every once in a while, be like, how are you feeling, and what can I do for you? Because you have the ability to do that, for the people you love and care for. Now, the next person is Sagittarius moon in the third house. Now, this person, is very, not patient person, not a patient person at all. So like they like to seize opportunities right when they see them, but more so when they're like in their emotional state. Somebody might have ticked them off. They're gonna do some things that you didn't see coming, kind of shit. You know, and you're gonna be like, damn, I only see this side of them when I do such and such things, or maybe I lack, in doing some things, and they're like, something needs to be done, because this ain't it. They'll say shit like that, so they'll do something. It might be some stupid shit too, but they don't care because they need, something needs to be done. We can't just be sitting here on our asses. We can't just be in a stagnant state in our relationship. Whether that be your friends, family members, this person gonna be like, man, I gotta make I gotta make some shit happen, and it's not always, um, like smooth sailing is what I'm gonna say with it. But on a positive note, they like to push other people, and or not maybe not push other people, but inspire the people to like move differently, and like just like do that thing that you want to do, because you don't want to wait and let life pass you by, you know and you don't have to think or too much, just go do that thing you want to do, and whatever anybody else says don't matter. I'm not hearing it, and even if I am hearing it, we might have to slap somebody or something. We might have to get after, because this is somebody of fire sign, you know, in the moon, right? Sagittarius is mutable fire, so they like to, change things up. You know, when they get tired of this, they're into something else. When they get tired of that, they're into something else. And you'll know what they're into. Even if it's somebody who's like, Sagittarius moon, you'll still know. Um, they, um, might, jump friend groups. It seems like, now that I'm into this, I don't like these people being around, you know, because they just can't get down with what I'm doing now, because I was doing stuff that they like, but now I'm doing stuff that I want to try out that's different than that, you know. And for this person, right, it's like I want to do this stuff because for me, I'll be letting myself down if I didn't, because I care about who I am, and they really do, for sure, because it's the moon sign. They can't let their past relationships or people like hold them back from doing something different, and they need that newness to keep them going and shit. You know, so this person might have to cut people off or whatever. They'll actually have the decency to tell them, well, I'm not doing this type of thing anymore. I'm doing this. And if you don't like it, we can go our separate ways, or we can continue being friends. You know, but that's what the fuck's going on, and like me or hate me, that's what I'm gonna do with my life. And that's how they figure out if they have like real ones beside them or not. And sometimes they do have to cut people off and like make a whole new friend groups and other things, and they will, because they have that kind of energy about them and other things when they like something. But it's like a downside too sometimes, because sometimes it's like family members and friends, you know but they'll always make sure that they have um fun, and they have the ability to like make new friends. But it's like, damn, you know I wish those people would have seen things my way. But they ain't gonna let that get them down too much, because like they understand that if they're seen having fun still, their friends will know, and they'll be like, oh, well, maybe I was the one who was out of sorts, and so isn't that bad of a person, and he didn't really, he's still, or she's still, that fun, person that I care for or whatever. even though I don't do that type of thing. But the next person is Cancer, or not Cancer. Goddamn, I already talked about them. Capricorn moon in the third house. This person, when they're emotional, they like to, do things, but they see, what's going on, what's wrong in like the moment. So they'll pick at the fact that money's not right, or they'll pick at um maybe you don't have a job or like a career. You're hopping from job to job maybe as their friend, and they're like, well, what the fuck? I'm going to work doing this, doing that. And you're playing games, being, you have this job, you have that job. You don't know how to hold down a job and stick to it and be disciplined and be, that type of thing. Where's our money at? We need to like make sure we are like have our shit together, out of sorts and shit. When you like piss them off, they start to like kind of like nitpick almost too, and like let you know what the fuck like it's really going on right now with your situation with them. You know, you're in a relationship with a female as a person like this, you're gonna like let them know, well, maybe I ain't gonna like stay with you. I'm gonna put more time into my career. I'm gonna put more time into, making money. I'm gonna put more time into hanging out with the guys, as a, fuck you to them, or whatever. Maybe it's the other way around, it's the female. Maybe it's a friendship that's like falling apart because, you as this person, when you give advice, you want people to like listen to it and do it, you know. And sometimes it's like you take it back on yourself too. Sometimes you take it back on yourself. So what I mean by this is, you know, they disobeyed you or didn't do what you wanted them to do. Like you laid something on them, like, okay, go to work, get this money, and we'll save money and do this. You know, you didn't have enough. You weren't looking like the person who was, put together, about their shit. So now you're putting it all on yourself, and you're like, damn, I'm the piece of shit. I'm the one who's worthless. I'm the one who's like not doing enough. Now, I actually, didn't, or I did let them down. I was the one who let them down because I didn't have, my shit figured out. And I was trying to tell them, what to do and other things, but I don't even have my shit straight. And like you would look at yourself like that, when you're like, looking at things, after a while you'd be like, damn, I might have been an asshole, in that kind of way, you know, and you might know that you can get your shit right, but you're still like, you know, in that moment you weren't making any sense because you didn't have your shit together and you were just bitching about somebody like probably having fun or mm, doing things that you don't see as, you know, motivating, or we're growing as, people, or, we ain't getting what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to get a house, we're trying to get a car, we're trying to get, this and that. And you're, fucking around playing games, doing this, doing that. You have certain things that tick you off about that. Because it might not be necessarily that they're doing that stuff, right? It's like what they're doing it, how they're doing things with other people, and then you're kind of like the one that's like, not having fun, and you're like, well, what the fuck, and you start, going the fuck off on them about how their life's messed up, and they're not put together because they do shit like that. But it's like also a thing where, sometimes you were a part of that fun, and like it just something ticked you off again, and then you started to be an asshole about, oh, well, you don't have this and that, and you don't have this and that, and then it's like out of nowhere, and you're like, everybody's like, wait, what? You're kind of like bringing shit the fuck down. And you're like, yeah, I am bringing shit the fuck down. I'm giving you a dose of reality, is what you're trying to say. And and you might be right, but it's also, you look back on yourself and be like, I was like fucking kind of weak a little bit because I didn't even have my shit together, towards like what I was trying to do. And I was talking to them like they, and I'm no better than they are, because you like start to look at shit like that once you like get away from them and shit, and you're like, oh well, damn, But you might not even apologize, depending on what your sun sign is. You might just, get on your grind and like, then you'll go back to them once you have your shit together and be like, hey man, what the fuck are y'all doing? Y'all still playing games and shit. But that's how you move and stuff with your like people you care about and stuff. And, so they say certain shit, and it's kind of like with the Scorpio a little bit too. They'll say shit like you don't know what you're doing, or you don't have the means to do, and you're like, no, I can do, because that's cardinal earth. You know in yourself that you can make shit happen, and you see what can be done. So the next person is Aquarius moon in the third house. So this person values communication, right? Or like loves to communicate with their, people in their lives, you know, friends, family members, about, things that they're into, whatever that might be, whatever ideas they might have about, life, where they going, or whatever. They're kind of like free thinking too. So like what that means is they might be a little bit more, outside the box with what they're thinking about. And like what other people are thinking about might be more, other ways of thinking that they might already thought of already. This person who has the Aquarius moon in the third house. So this person, likes to have that communication in their, relationships, um, whatever that might be, close friendship, family relationship. They like to like let people know what's going on, you know, and then if they have to get away from people, they like to, they don't like to feel tied down, or tied down to, one thing or whatever, you know. They might have a like, way of thinking about things, right? But they still like to, go and stimulate their mind elsewhere. You don't need to trap these people. Um, and this is the only way you can think about things, type of thing. Sometimes that is it. This is what it is, and they do have to accept it. You know, you know, you know, you know, there's certain things that you don't question and stuff, and then like maybe this person is questioning things a bit too much, and then in their relationships, it's leading to like drama and other things, and they're like um, damn, we've told you so many times that it's not like that, you shouldn't do these kind of things, and it's not this, but maybe it is. You're just crazy, and you're you know that type of thinking is not right. Something is wrong with you, but maybe sometimes it ain't. Maybe sometimes you're just trying to improve something and they don't want to support you, and then you get upset about it as the person who's Aquarius moon. You're like, damn, why the fuck can't these idiots see what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to, make people's lives better by, improving something, or you had an idea about how, things could be done, and it was never stated before in the relationship. We can move this way in our relationship, or this way, and they didn't, like hearing that. But you were just offering a new idea, because we need to do something, right? You know, um, but you also like to think that you know it all sometimes, and then that leads to more arguments and other things. So sometimes you have to sit back and be a listener again, and just listen to other people. The person who has Aquarius moon in the third house, yes, you know things, and you do see things a little bit differently, but you need to see the other person's side, and you need to listen to what they got to say too. Because you ain't always right. So the next person, the last person, is Pisces moon in the third house. So this person, when they get emotional, they get out of sorts a little bit. You know, they're like, "Oh, well, you don't appreciate me for what I do. You know, you don't see how I'm creative. I pick up on what you're going through, but you can't pick up on what I'm going through." They'll say shit like that. I know when you're, out of sorts, and when you're, in distress, but when it's me, you can't tell. You can't tell when I'm, hurt, when I'm in pain, when I'm just acting like everything's together when it ain't. You know, these people be like that, a little bit toxic, and sometimes they do that to keep people around, you know, so they can, benefit from, whatever these people do for them. Or, on the other side of things, it might be that they're being used and shit, but they don't see that, they're being used by people. They're like, well, I'm the one in the relationship who's supposed to make, you know, my friends and my family members feel better. You know, something's wrong with me. You know, I'm the one who's, weak. I'm the one who's this. No, you just got to get away from them and, not give yourself to them so much. Give all your time and energy and, sacrifice yourself for them so much. You know, sometimes you can do that, you know, but this person really loves these people, really cares about these people. So, like, even thoughts like that seem like it's like, they then look like a bad person or whatever, you know, but on the other side of things, when it's like negative, you're abusing these people, you're trying to use them. And then you like bring up the fact that and you bring up the past. That's how you manipulate these water signs when they do shit. They bring up the past. So it's like you were in this state, but now, well, when I came around, you weren't then like that. Your life changed for the better, and you're saying things like I don't, and other things, and maybe those people weren't saying that, and you're twisting shit into like making it seem that way. They just disagreed with you on something, and you were twisting shit to be that. you know but on, like, again, on the other side of things, you might actually be the one who's like being abused by other people, and you're putting all your time and energy into other people so much that you know that you're taking in all their you know negative, taking on all their shit, and that's the shit that's actually making you crash out, making you feel like shit, because people ain't taking note of you. You're trying to play a supportive role too much in a relationship, to where like then they ain't supporting you and whatever dreams and goals you have going on, and like all that adds up, and then arguments happen and other things. But you're a person who is like intuitive and other things, so if you have to like leave somebody alone, or they have to leave you alone, um because you need to figure some things out, you know then that's what it needs to be. But that is the moon sign in the third house for all the signs. um Next week will be Mercury in the third house. So be cool on the corner. stay tuned for those reviews too when I put on this ride.